In this video, we're going to talk about what the forbidden fruit was that Adam and Eve ate in paradise. And most people, when they imagine the forbidden fruit, they picture an apple. But that's a mistake. The forbidden fruit was not an apple, and that's because there was an error in the translation. We'll discuss that topic soon. But first, I'll show you the forbidden fruit, and we'll cover it in more depth later. But inside this box, I have what in Jewish tradition is considered to be the forbidden fruit. We'll open the box soon and discuss that topic. But first, I want to show you where the mistake comes from that makes people believe the forbidden fruit was an apple. Because this happens. People watch Hollywood movies and similar art. And they imagine that the woman was like this in paradise and that there was a tree and the serpent came down from the tree like this. What do I know? And she gives her one of those classic red apples like the one from the movie Snow White. And that is the fruit that caused them to be expelled from paradise. But that's a translation error, and I'll show you why next. It is written in Genesis 2 verse 9. That's about the tree from which the forbidden fruit comes. In Hebrew, I'll read to you. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What happened? Did this translation in Latin have a way in which it got confused? I'll explain how the Latin translation was done. There was a pope named Damasus in the 4th century who asked his secretary or ordered his secretary to translate the Bible. That secretary was named Jerome, and he asked Jerome to do the translation of the Bible. What's happening? Jerome translates it into Latin, and that text is known as the Vulgate. And is this the translation that Jerome did? Is it the same verse or just a fragment? I didn't include it all, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, as I mentioned. And he creates good and evil. The word evil in Hebrew. In Latin, Geronimo, he wrote mali. What's going on? In Latin, the word mali is just a grammatical form, but the word malum in Latin means apple. Here it is in the dictionary source. You can check it yourselves. This comes from Latin. It comes from Doric Greek, which is the word malum, etc. But the point is that the word malo is not Apple, the computers, or the iPhone, but rather Apple. That the word malum grammatically is also bad, like something like evil, malum, which is similar to Spanish, right? The language is Romance, but it's also Apple. And that's why it came to be like to try to graphically represent this fruit, malum, this bad fruit. Let's represent it as a malum, as an apple, and that's how it is in art. For example, it is represented as an apple, although this looks like a peach, but it's a representation of an apple. Stained glass window from Brussels Cathedral. Throughout all of art, especially during the Renaissance, it is represented as an apple. I didn't include the images because they expose a lot of the body. It's a Judaism page, etc. So the point is, that's the origin. That's why there wasn't a translation error, just a translation. He chose the word malum. There's simply no error there, but in trying to represent the idea, that's why it turned into evil. So now I want to show you what the forbidden fruit is. Actually, there's a mahloket with 5 opinions on the topic, but I want to show you what's said about the forbidden fruit right now. By the way, we're in the festival of Sukkot. We Jews are in the festival of Sukkot, which is also known as the festival of booths or the festival of tabernacles. And we have this fruit. This fruit, I'm going to open this box now so you can see what's inside. These, gentlemen. It's an etrog. Etrog, that's what it's called in Hebrew. In Spanish, I think they translate it as citron. So this is the citron. Some people call it that. But it's the etrog, and it's a fruit that has a very strong aroma. Pleasant. In fact, I already said the blessing, but there's a blessing. I don't know if you knew that Jews say blessings before eating. I mean, after going to the bathroom. We have many blessings, yes, like to sanctify the day, etc., or every moment of the day. There's a blessing for smelling fragrant fruits like the etrog. That's the one you say. Note, reach, tov, bi, perop. I already said the blessing. I can't repeat the blessing in vain, but just so you know, it's an interesting fact. Note, reach, tov, bi, perop. That's right, so I want to show you. This is the etrog that a Jew holds. You can see here the etrog before the festival of Sukkot. They go and buy it. Jews run out of them. This is in the United States, and the etrog is displayed with the pitam on top. That's an etrog, gentlemen. It can be worth up to, I'm not going to exaggerate. I used to think it was hundreds of dollars, but it could be worth thousands. An etrog like that appeared in an article this week in the news in Israel, saying that there are people who pay thousands of dollars for an etrog and are willing to pay it, etc., because this is a mitzvah. This is an important commandment from the Torah. I'll show you different types of etrog. Yes, well, before I tell you about what I'm doing right now at this moment, parenthesis, it's about building the idea around the forbidden fruit of Eden. But for this, I want to build the idea, yes, so that you understand the point. These are different types of etrogim. Another parenthesis, the word in singular is etrog. In plural, it's etrogim. When you add the suffix im, it's masculine plural in Hebrew. So these are different etrogim. This is a giant etrog, gentlemen. That's how big the etrog used by the Jews, Teimanim, is. And that's the whole set that is taken. Those are palm leaves. I don't know the names of the others, but it's Adas agava. I think it's myrtle and willow. I'm not sure. And that's the etrog, the fruit I have here. The forbidden fruit that Adam and Eve ate in Eden. That's the ritual that's done, that you take the 4 species and move them. And why do we do it? Where does this tradition come from? It's a law that's in the Torah. It's written in Leviticus 23 verse 40. It says, Si ulkatem. So you will take for yourselves on the first day of the festival of Sukkot, which I told you about. We're in the festival of booths, tabernacles, whatever you call it, which is the festival of Sukkot. So it says, you will take for yourselves on the first day fruit of the beautiful fruit. That's how they translated it. Fruit of the beautiful tree, palm branches. That's the lulav, branch of a leafy tree, of the willow, of the brook, etc. Agavot, etc. And 7 days since Sukkot lasts a week. This is the fruit in question, pre-Etz Hadar, which they brought as the fruit of the beautiful tree. Although here it could be understood linguistically as if what is beautiful is either the tree or the fruit itself is the beautiful one. Consider it, since this topic has long been debated linguistically, the Samaritans interpret it one way, while the Karaites interpret it differently. The beautiful thing here is the tree, the fruit. Excuse me, even the Septuagint interprets it that way. But anyway, this is a representation of the Etrog. It's a 19th century representation, the Etrog. That's the inside, It's like a citrus fruit. It looks like a lemon, but it's not a lemon. It's another fruit, different from a lemon. In Judaism, it is actually a different category from a lemon. Here's another way to represent the Etrog, in parentheses. I'm building the argument like this, be patient, but I'm going to show you some really interesting things throughout this, like this argument. There are some very interesting things I want to show you. And this is a Jewish coin from the 2nd century. This is Hebrew from Ktav Ivri, Ktav Ashuri. The one we use today in modern Hebrew, in the Hebrew of the Torah, is Ktav Ashuri. It's Ktav Ivri, a script that says, for the liberation of Israel. And here we see the representation of the Etrog. This is another representation, which is a coin from 134, 135. In fact, the exact year is there. It's just that the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar overlap. That's why the dating is in the middle. But that's the Etrog, you understand. On Jewish coins from 2,000 years ago, the Etrog appeared. That is, it's not an unknown fruit. We didn't just make it up out of nowhere. It's a fruit that is mentioned. The Torah is a fruit that appears on ancient Jewish coins. In fact, it's in historical texts. For example, Flavius Josephus. Here I show you where Flavius Josephus talks about the Etrog in Jewish antiquities. In the book, he doesn't use the word Etrog, but writes citron instead. This appears in Jewish Antiquities, book 13. I'm sharing this story because it's interesting. There was a king in Israel who was a king from the Hasmonean dynasty. He was an evil king, very cruel. He killed many Jews, a ruthless wretch named Alexander Yanai, Alejandro Janeo in Spanish, Alejandro Janeo. What he did was persecute many Jews, and that's why the people didn't like Alexander Yanai. He was a bad king. He was a cruel king. What happened was that it was the festival of Sukkot. At that time, there was a temple in Jerusalem. It was the 2nd temple. May Hashem help us rebuild the 3rd temple soon. Alexander Yanai the king, he performed the sacrifice for the festival of Sukkot, as a sacrifice is part of this festival. And what happened is that the people became so furious to see an evil king trying to perform a sacrifice. Because Alexander Yanai was also a priest, he was a descendant of Aaron, the priest, and that's why he was able to perform that sacrifice. And the people became so furious that a king who was doing so many evil things was trying to make a sacrifice to God. And people were outraged, and each one took, because it was the festival of Sukkot. Everyone had the Etrog, and people started throwing the Etrogim, in plural. They started throwing the Etrogim at Alexander Yanai, and the Etrogim started hitting him, and they almost lynched him with Etrogim. He had to escape. Imagine this. If you touch it, it's like a stone. Gentlemen, it's really hard. Imagine Etrogim. I can see Alexander Yanai. So he had to escape, and that story is told by Flavius Josephus. I'll read it to you. During the Sukkot festival, King Alexander Yanai was at the altar preparing to offer a sacrifice. Alexander Janeo, the people rebelled and threw Etrog, the citron, at him as stated, which they had in their hands at that time. Jewish law required everyone to have palm branches and Etrog during the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, which we have recounted elsewhere. Here, Flavius Josephus brings up this story that they started this, which is also mentioned in Jewish literature. Well, Flavius Josephus is Jewish. He was Jewish, a traitor Jew, but still a Jew. And it said that they threw Etrogim at Alexander Jannaeus. And it says that Flavius Josephus already mentioned this elsewhere. In fact, yes, in book 3, he says, but on the 15th day of the same month, which is the month of Tishrei, which is the month we are in, when the season of the year turns into winter, we go from Mogita Tal to Mashivavohu Mogita, Geshem. The law tells us to build huts, that is the sukkah, in each of our homes. I have my sukkah here, I mean outside. That we carry in our, well, more text, that we carry in our hand a myrtle branch, a willow branch, a palm branch, and also the etrog, the citron. He says, but gentlemen, this is not an unknown fruit. This is not something invented by Judaism. To have this small fruit, which isn't a lemon or an orange, etc. One time I saw, you know what? There are many people who disguise themselves as Jews on social media. One time I saw one of these rabbis who isn't even Jewish. Well, over there, I think in Colombia, he was uploading a video saying, well, it's already the festival of Sukkot, and I'm going to celebrate Sukkot with my etrog. He used an orange, saying it's written as a citrus fruit, so it's the same. But guys, an orange isn't an etrog. Just so you know, I'll show you a very ancient source, which is the Targum Onkelos. What is the Targum Onkelos? It's a translation of the Torah into Aramaic. Scholars estimate that this translation is from the early 2nd century. Not only that, the person who translated, the one who made this translation, was named Onkelos. Onkelos, according to many scholars, is the same person. Aquila of Sinope. Aquila of Sinope is a translator who translated biblical texts into Greek. And this same person is believed to be Onkelos because their biographies match, the things they did match, the historical period matches, so it has been concluded that Aquila is the same as Onkelos. For your information, that's an ancient Aramaic translation of the Torah. How does it phrase it? Yes. What will you take for yourselves? Yes, I translated it. This is the translation in Aramaic. They are letters like in Hebrew, but it's Aramaic, which is actually the other way around. They are Aramaic letters. But will you take for yourselves on the first day? Fruit of the etrogim tree in Aramaic, plurals are with the final vel, ulabim, veadazim, veagabim. So here, El, when he says a beautiful tree, he doesn't mean just any beautiful tree, but specifically an etrog tree. That's the translation made by Onkelos, meaning we know this because of that and for many other reasons. As you can see, the etrog is an ancient fruit among the Jewish people. But because Onkelos translated the word fruit, why didn't he translate it literally as fruit from a beautiful tree? Why didn't he translate beautiful literally? Well, actually, he did. I'm going to show you the etymology of the word etrog. This is the root of the word etrog. Aleph Reish Gimel originates from Aramaic. It is believed that it came through Persian, meaning that the word is in Aramaic. It came by way of Persian, and that's how it reached Hebrew. What does Miraj al-Majezi say? This is an Aramaic translation of Genesis 2. I didn't bring it. But it's also in Exodus, also in Psalms, also in Deuteronomy. The word when it means desirable in Aramaic. When someone desires something, when someone wants something, when someone craves something, That's how you say it. That's the same root of Aleph, Resh, Gimel, yes, Mergag or Mergeg or Mitrageg. There are many ways it can be used. So etymologically is the root of when someone wants something, when someone desires something, when someone has a desire. Yes, or Tava or Jemdas. In Hebrew, in Aramaic, that's called Mitrageg or Mergeg, so it's the same root. That etymological explanation is not mine. It's from Maimonides. Sorry, it's from Nachmanides in his Perusa. Vaikar 23. This is very important to know. Why? We're going to see why. Because now I'm going to get to the topic of the forbidden fruit. What is this forbidden fruit? Let me tell you something very sincere, gentlemen. Very sincere with you. People, when they read the texts of the Torah, read them as if they were reading Condorito, right? Like, let's read Condorito, and they open the Bible, and well, gentlemen, that's not how it is. When people imagine the story, they literally imagine Adam, right? Naked with just a leaf, like in the movies, walking through a garden with animals, talking to him, and a lion approaches. And gentlemen, please don't simplify the story of the Torah in such childish ways. Doesn't it make you imagine a Hollywood cartoon version of what paradise is in the most simplistic mindset? Isn't that so? The story of Bereshit, of the serpent, of Adam, all of this is something highly profound, highly profound. Additionally, Baal Sulam comments on the serpent. Who is it? The devil? Satan? No, in fact, Kabbalah itself mentions that it is the same man, the human being, who is the serpent. That's a profound story, gentlemen, isn't it? So what I'm getting at is this. I want to show you a midrash. 1 second, I have an alarm I want to turn off. There, done. There's a midrash that I'll show you. This is here in Bereshit Rabbah. Yes, this is in Bereshit Rabbah, chapter 20, etc. And they just explained, it's in Genesis 3:17. It says that when God is telling Adam, you ate from the tree, right? Ki achalta min ha'etz. It says, you ate from the tree. This supports Rabbi Abba from Akko's statement. It was an etrog. How so? I'm not explaining it to you, Midrash. It's very interesting and makes much more sense when read in Hebrew. The problem with translations into Spanish is that a lot of this essence is lost. But here is what it says. This is the verse in Hebrew from Genesis 3:17 and the translation. It says, because you listened to your wife, etc., and you ate from the tree which I told you not to eat from. In fact, that's how it's translated too, right? That you ate from the tree from which I commanded you, saying you shall not eat from it. Gentlemen, there's something interesting here. Please consider it with me. It says that you ate from the tree. It doesn't say that you ate from the fruit. It doesn't say that God is reproaching Adam, saying, why did you eat from the forbidden fruit? The Torah doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It says he ate from the tree. But did he take a branch, eat the branch, or the trunk? How did he eat from the tree? He ate. So the explanation of Yalmin Eitz is what the Midrash explains. Because the Etrog has a very unique characteristic. And that is that the tree of the Etrog tastes like the Etrog itself. If you take a branch from the Etrog, it tastes like the Etrog. That's a very unique characteristic. It's very rare. You're not going to take a fruit or, I don't know, a branch from a vineyard and it's going to taste like grapes. That's not going to happen. But with the Etrog, it does happen because the tree tastes like the Etrog. It's something crazy and so on. But what do you want to get at here? And that's the point I wanted to reach. What's the lesson here? What did Adam do? And let's go over all the ideas again. If the word Etrog means desire, like desire, right? Like when you want something and it's the forbidden fruit, what does all this mean? Adam's mistake was that he put his desire above his reason. That's what the Midrash refers to. That's also what the text of the Kabbalah refer to. That's what Nachmanides brings. In fact, he also explains it literally just as I'm explaining it. Adam ate the forbidden fruit, which is why the Etrog is considered the forbidden fruit. I told you there are 5 opinions in the Malukit, but what is it referring to there? The desirable fruit? Yes, it's Adam. It's a desirable fruit in the sense that it smells good, it tastes good. When you make jam with it, what do I know? In fact, Etrog jam is delicious. It's a fruit that's also beautiful visually. So, gentlemen, all of this is because Adam is the human being, humanity, right? Man and woman, I mean, humanity, right? Women are also part of what Adam is, right? Just so you know, But the human being, by putting his desire above his reason, is falling. That is the fall of the human being from paradise. That is what leads him to the degradation of that ideal status, right? Paradise means an ideal version of the world, right? But it's clearly more complex. I summarized it in 2 lines, but that's the point. When human beings, we don't do a mental exercise, but instead we let ourselves be carried away by emotion, right? Did I have a revelation? Or isn't it that it's nationalism inspires me because of my national pride? Or I'm attracted to such a thing, or I let myself go because my body feels the need to eat, or to have one, or to do something negative, or when a human being lets themselves go without applying this. Gentlemen, God gave us a brain. Let me remind you, it's not just for decoration. It's so we can use mental exercises, right? We shouldn't rely solely on I have faith. Faith is meaningless without reason. It's the concept of emuna. Emuna is an intellectual process that leads to another range of processes, which are the emotional ones. How do you put it? Spiritual and all that? So, reason is a very important component in the Jewish view. That's what makes man fall. Man is humanity. When humanity, all the nations of the world, the human being puts above emotion, desires, what I like, and so on. Without grasping the depth, like this mental exercise. That's why on my page, what's the logo of my page? Not the logo, but what's the slogan of my page? Don't fall for stories. Don't fall for stories means use your reasoning so you don't get fooled. That's the whole point here. So with God's help, that's the point I wanted to tell you. The Etrog is the forbidden fruit precisely because of the message it conveys. Parenthesis, the Etrog is compared in our tradition to the brain. That's another interesting fact, and one of the reasons it is also compared. Some people also compare it to both the heart and the brain together because the heart, parenthesis, don't get confused either. Judaism is not just that. Be rationalists and don't have faith. That's not it. You also have to have emuna. You also have to have faith. You also have to be spiritual. You also have to know how to control your desires. That's the point. It's not just reason, but a combination of everything. But what happens is that when humanity loses the part of reason, that's when humanity falls from paradise. That's the point, which is why we were expelled from paradise. So may the Mashiach come soon so that we can return to this status of a world like Eden, like paradise. And may there be joy. May it also be, with Hashem's favor, that the third temple is rebuilt so we can properly celebrate Sukkot, and that's all. I send joy and greetings to all of you.